Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Pierce. I am the Learning and Video Ambassador for TechSmith, and we want to welcome you to our show. We've got a great show for you today, as long as the internet holds up, because you just never know. But before we get into our episode, we're going to be talking with Dawn Mahoney about creating job aids. She's got a new course that just launched on the TechSmith Academy. We're so grateful for her creating that. It's really great content, and we'll get to that in just a second. Of course, with that said, if you haven't checked out TechSmith Academy, it is a free online learning platform that allows you to go out and learn about creating things like scripts and storyboards and making videos and creating job aids. We've got some great interviews out there with some fantastic professionals, both in the training and development world, but also folks who are making videos all the time for YouTube and other platforms. So go check it out. It's all free and it's available for you. Go to academy.techsmith.com or follow the bit.ly that's on the screen. Now, with that said, I am excited to have my guest today because I got to meet Dawn. I don't even remember when we met. It's been a while now, but she's been someone that's been in the industry, always advocating for best practices, always, out there sharing her knowledge. She does a lot of stuff, both writing and sharing her thoughts and ideas to make the community and just so much better. And I knew I wanted to work with her, and we had the great privilege over this course of 2020, I guess that's the year it is, it's still, to create a course about job aids, because it's something that a lot of people forget about, or they think they have to have a course or they have to have these big whole process things, but you can just sometimes have a job aid. So with that said, let's welcome Dawn to our program. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yes, it's still 2020. We're only in September, Matt.
We'll get there eventually. It feels like it's been a lot longer some days.
Yeah, true. Very, very true. Thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing me to enter the Academy.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dawn, there's probably people who are watching or who will watch us or listen to this that haven't had a chance to meet you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. Well, if you count the rings, you know that I've been in this industry and doing work in training, facilitation, instructional design for a long time now. I've worked in large organizations, a few of them over the years, building and growing training and development, and always bringing what do they need to know how to do on the job is always, let's not give them more, let's do a really good job of reinforcing it. And so that's been my mantra internally in the organizations I worked in. And then since launching my company in 2015, Learning in the White Space, I have been largely devoted to instructional design, but also facilitation, which is still my most favorite thing to do. That's my heart and soul. And whether it's e-learning or in face-to-face, I'm doing a lot of face-to-face these days. But also always doing job aids. It's just something that's in my brain. So cheat sheets back in the day before we had fabulous tools. It's kind of my gig.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? Like it's what an important thing to do, because I think there's so much information that's being thrown around at people, especially in corporations and businesses, that the expectation that you're just going to know everything seems pretty overwhelming.
Yes, and I've worked, my jobs have been in financial with deeply complex system training where they have to know all kinds of codes or know how to find. When I started really getting it that we could give people the tools to learn how to fish versus all the other things. So they knew how to look things up. They knew where to look them up in other places, but mostly why to look them up and not forcing people to memorize. Life got a little bit easier. That meant I also didn't have to have it all memorized. And I think that's the number one lesson, which is go through your instructional design plan and figure out what do they absolutely have to know fingertip right away, or what do they know how to find on their own? Parse that out.
Yeah, for sure. And just for all those who are watching there, we'd love to hear from you in the chat today. So if you've got questions that you want to ask Dawn, or if you've got something you want to share about working with job aids, maybe an experience or something, put those in the chat. We are watching those, and I do see that someone mentioned they're from the Netherlands that's watching. So let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. So Don, let's get into this because I mean, job aids. It seems simple, and I think overall it probably is a simple concept, right? Like create something like you said, so you can go find it. You don't have to know it. And I think Google has probably made this a much more readily available kind of concept. But if we were to say, and not to put you on the spot, but like, what makes a good job aid? What do you think you would say kind of are some fundamental like parts or pieces that would need to be true for something to be considered a good job aid?
Of course, it depends on what kind of performance support you're trying to provide. Also, what behaviors you're hoping to reinforce from whatever the learning intervention is going forward. But I think screenshots and guidance provided on screenshots is probably the number one thing I would say, or good quality images with clear and concise. Can I put concise in all caps, please? Sets of instructions. It's not the place to be verbose. We don't need to write paragraphs when a sentence will do. Bullet points or numbered lists so that people have clear guidance and concise. They can go there quickly, figure out what they need to do, dip in and dip back out. Those would be my really big things. From there, I would say the best way I've ever figured out what to include in a job aid or job aids, or if I was going to build some sort of performance support tool versus having a course or a class, is go visit the people in their work and find out what their own personal cheat sheets are. What Post-it notes do they have up and around their computer? In their work area, because people are creating job aids for themselves. If we're not providing them, we don't necessarily know that they have all the good stuff that you want them to have. By the same token, use their knowledge, use their wisdom. So those are a couple keys.
Yeah, no, I love that. So we got clear, we've got concise. And I love this idea of going and seeing what people are already doing. I mean, and this is a bad practice, but it's like the people who have sticky notes, that's their passwords, right? The reason they're doing that is because it's insanely difficult to remember all their passwords and they have to be so different or whatever. But it seems like if you're creating the right tools for people, they won't have to make that their own sticky note for like, how do I do this? You know, I seem to remember one about how do I log time in a system or something like that. Just was harder than it needed to be.
Yep, we have in the training and development or the learning world, however you name yourself and where your group, we have made it difficult, or we haven't partnered with the right people to make it less barriers to success. So how can we take, if single sign-on is a thing, why aren't we single sign-on, for instance, so they don't have to have passwords written down and tucked under their keyboard because they don't use that system very often? Why can't we just build it in a way that's usable?
Yeah, it makes sense that we're doing a disservice if we're providing them these other, not the right options. So we have a question that came in, and I think it's a really good one from Peter. How you doing, Peter? Thanks for the compliment on the camera, first of all. Peter's asking if you have a number of courses, each with a few job aids. So let's say we've got 3 courses, each got a few job aids. How do you recommend making those job aids available outside of the course? It makes sense if like inside a course, you might provide at the end, like, hey, here's a job aid, how you do this. But the course doesn't seem like the right place for those to live. What would you recommend?
I would definitely pull them out of the course, because you're losing a great opportunity for people to be reinforced back on the job. They could grab, if it's in the course or class, they could grab them and take them with them somehow, whether that's physically as a piece of paper or as a download. That would be the only reason to have it in the course, in my opinion, because otherwise they have to go through the course again to get them, right? That kind of defeats the purpose. I would build a link to a repository if you use SharePoint or Google Docs or whatever system you use in your organization, where all those things live, and we give people one link one set of magic keys that they can go to grab what they need when they need it. Back in the day, we had binders with tabs, labeled tabs, and it made it simple to be able to hand flip where you needed to go. These days, we're mostly digital, probably not 100%, but so whatever you need to do, again, to remove barriers and make it simple to get to when they need it, because the whole point of a job aid or other performance support tool is they're going to be using it at the point of need. They want to get there quickly, get what they need, and get out.
Yeah, for sure. So this leads to, I think, a question that I have is because I've started this process. I'm using a tool. It's kind of like Evernote. It's called Notion, where I've been building out basically quick guides for myself, right? So, like for instance, I was invited to use Salesforce for some process stuff, and I'm not a Salesforce user, but then I was, like having to remember how to do certain things, and my coworker made me a video. Is that a job aid if I put that into this little bucket of things that I can easily, quickly refer to, or like, does that count?
Yes, I think short videos count as job aids or performance support tools. I think videos are not the answer to everything in the job aid stratosphere. I think that partly because they have to watch the video and get to the point in the video where the stuff they really wanted is, it's probably not as an effective of a tool as something that's a linked document, like a PDF that has a set of links so they can travel throughout. But a really quick video, and maybe it's embedded in a PDF or a PowerPoint deck or whatever tool you use, show somebody something 30, 40 seconds and dip out, do another 30, 40 seconds, and then make it possible that the people can pick the one they need.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, and I agree with you. Video, I love video, but it's definitely not the answer to many things, especially when I know I'm frustrated trying to get something done quickly. Sometimes
Right.
video isn't the right answer.
Right.
So it does lead to another question about just kind of general. And I know there's going to be there's lots of different types of job aids. We can talk about that in a few minutes, but I'm curious about general, like, you said clear, concise, I think about it's smaller in terms of, the overall amount of content. Is there a guideline or a heuristic here that we could say, like, if it's going to be more than some amount of content, that it really should be more than a job aid? Or are there really no limits to, I mean, I guess we're making this stuff up, so it is whatever we call it. But like,
Pick a number. No.
what are the guidelines, kind of in overall size? And I know it's different based on media and what you're making, but again, kind of rules of thumb around that, Don.
I don't think there's a limit on size. It's kind of like PowerPoint, that you can use as many slides in there as you need to. They cost the same whether you use one or 1,001. So the answer to me first is it needs to be as much as everybody needs. However, so if it's 1,000-page reference manual, that 1,000-page reference manual has to be really well indexed. It has to be broken down into small, easily consumable, findable parts. And 1,000 is not out of the realm of possibilities. I have seen many of them in my storied and checkered past, so to speak. So it isn't about quantity, it's about how you provide the information within the quantity. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
if there's 10 steps to doing a complex thing, then I think you have to do probably more than 10 job aids. The job aids, or it might be 10 job aids, but each job aid is broken down into small chunks as well. So think about small, consumable, easily grabbed chunks of information. It's all about chunking.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, because if it's not quick, like the 1,000-page manual, right? Like all the information's there, but if I can't get to it quickly, it's probably not helpful. And I'm probably then creating, as a user, I'm creating my own little quick reference, right? Whether it's a sticky note or I have lots of pieces of paper that I just write notes on that eventually get thrown away. So I'm sure I've thrown away a lot of knowledge, but I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Before we get to our next question, just a couple of comments that I want to share here with you, Don. Crystal Jaeger, who is a guest from last week, actually. Hi, Crystal.
Oh, yeah.
Understanding actual behaviors as opposed to prescriptive behaviors is extremely helpful in designing instructional and training materials. Yeah, absolutely. She says, thanks, Matt and Don. And then...
and I say thanks to you, Crystal.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we got some Lavine guy. I use very short, under 1 minute screen recordings as a link within a job aid as a visual representation, but not as a replacement for the job aid itself. Yeah, absolutely.
I think to give context in some form of, in addition to the video, typically. The video itself is probably not the context setting.
Right. I do know that at one point, former CFO of ours was talking about some complex tax thing he had to do like once a quarter, as taxes are, they're always complex. And it was just infrequent enough that he couldn't always remember the detailed, complicated steps. And he said he just made himself a video. He's like, I just had to review the video, and then he was on his way to the next thing. So definitely seems like a lot of options, and obviously images, videos, text. And in fact, let's talk about what are the limitations in terms of format here when we start getting into creating job aids? Are there things that make better job aids than not? We've talked a little bit about that with video, but what about other media?
That make better? I still live and die by the piece of paper, whether it's digital paper or print paper. I think there's still validity there. I don't think there's limitations. The only limitation really is your imagination and access to tools that you might use. But the cloud makes it so much easier now for us, available tools and tips and tricks. I'll just mention that the templates in Snagit are really great, templates for making quick job aids. You can include images or video later on if you want to. My computer just about tipped off my desk. I'm not even kidding.
Oh, no.
Wow. That was interesting. So I can't think of any true limitations. I would probably skip Excel as the medium, for instance, not to say that there wouldn't be aspects of Excel that you might include in the job aid, especially if it's about something in Excel, but I would probably import it into some other more visual medium. Other than that, I don't have a strong bias, I have to say.
All right. Well, I know, so if anyone isn't aware, and I just posted in at least some of the chat, the link to your new course in the TechSmith Academy, which is about creating job aids, and not everything needs to be a course. You have some great resources that you put together that actually talk about helping to choose the type of job aid that you might want for a particular circumstance. Would it be okay if we walk through that and take a look at that?
You want me to pull up the Google Sheet first?
Yeah, let's pull that up.
Okay, maybe I'll pull that up.
We'll see. We'll see how this works, everybody. This is what we get when we do things live.
Oh, and yeah, I have a new computer, so it wants me to say yes, it's okay. That's and privacy settings and all the things. So maybe you'll have to open it after all.
Okay. Well, that's okay. I've got it here. Let me. So let's talk through this concept. I'll bring it up on my screen if I can.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I have to go into preferences and then restart, which I don't think you want me doing.
And I've got to find the right one. I'm flipping. Everyone's going to see me flipping through all my camera stuff. So there. Nope. I am not finding it.
Well, I know where to find it. I can actually talk.
You can see all the different screens. There we go. Now I've got it up on just one thing. Okay. So here I've got it up in the TechSmith Academy. Let me actually open up in. So this is a downloadable resource. If anyone goes out to Don's course on the TechSmith Academy, this is a resource that anyone can access. You can make a copy of it for your own Google Drive, and you can see here we've got a couple of things. We've got, well, Don, I know you're familiar with this because you built it. We've got the kind of the axis here, the X and the Y of the chart. Tell us which, like when we look at column B, what are those?
Sorry, totally lost my screen. Tell me what's on there because it's blank.
So this is where it says like client or customer training, compliance training, things like that. And I'm going to try to get.
So I tried to
in.
list several types of courses or course content that you'll be working with that you also want to reinforce back on the job. Or it might be something that you don't actually need to build a course for, and you want the opportunity I want to give you permission, I guess is the best words for me to say, that sometimes the requesters come to you and expect you to build an e-learning course or a suite of courses when all people really need is a job aid. So when Matt and I first started talking about this, I kept visualizing this tool. So along the left in the left column, the types of training, you are free to add whatever's true for you. I tried to give several different types. So new procedures, how to use a new system tool or an old tool, but we have new procedures that we need to follow. Probably isn't always a class. It probably always isn't a course. We just need them to know what has changed and what's new. And that's why I also add your own here, because you may have something completely different. And then all of the columns to the right are a list of things that I thought of as performance support tools and types of job aids. So the goal would be, let's say you're on refresher training, you have that cell highlighted. Yep. You go across and figure out what you have available in your resources already in your organization, on your computer, for instance, and put check marks in all of the potential ways that you could consider providing a job aid to the learners in your organization other than building a course. Or maybe you're building a short course and you know that they're going to need performance support when they go and try to do the new procedure that you talked about in the refresher training. How is it going to be most effective for them? Is it an app for their phone? Is it a cheat sheet that they can click on within the software tool that they're using? Whatever. So the idea is to expand your mind past one or two things and think about what might actually be best on the job.
Yeah, no, I love this because it gives you a chance. Like you said, I love the idea that it gives you a chance to think beyond just like, oh, I'm gonna put down 3 steps on a piece of paper, which is good, not bad, but gives you a chance to think about the different types of things. My guess is, Don, and tell me if this is true, that as you go through this, you should be thinking about the end user and what's going to actually be most helpful to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Put yourself in their shoes, but also watch them, observe them in the work. I can't stress strongly enough, if you can make that happen, however you need to make that happen, especially in 2020, it's so enlightening that as instructional designers, if we just take the order that comes to us, the request that comes to us, order is probably a pejorative term, but that we just take somebody else's word for it, we probably don't have the whole story. And the request looks like a blue bottle, and I go watch people working, and they've got 6 other colors of bottle, and none of them are blue. Then I have some work to do, but also, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't know, and I would be building something, whatever it is, that is not an effective piece of learning content for the people in their work. I haven't helped them be successful at all. I've wasted company resources too, by the way.
Right. So I want to flip this on the conversation on its head a little bit, because we've been talking about the job aids in terms of like, this is when they make sense. This is what they can look like. You've got so many different options. And the name of the course in the Academy is Not Everything Needs to Be a Course, right? But are there kind of these other guidelines to say, like, because I can see myself doing this, actually. I can see myself saying, like, well, hey, you know what? I don't need to even make a course ever. I can just always make job aids. So for maybe someone who's newer to the field of instructional design or designing learning and training events, what would you say is like, when does a job aid not work, or when is it maybe not the right solution?
I think I'll turn your question just a little bit sideways
Please,
and say
please.
that it's not an either or, but there might be plenty of opportunities that instead of throwing everything into the course and the course grows really big or the class ends up being really big, is that we examine what can be in a course, what are the immovable objects that must be learning content that everybody goes through in one form or another, and then what are the ancillary pieces. I used to teach system training. There's a lot of core, everything goes this way, it's one directional. But then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that it's if this, then that. It's conditional statements. It's things that they learn. If they had it in the class, they might not use it for 2 or 3 years. The stuff that they may not use right away, I think it's a perfect place to put it is in job aids. And performance support tools, if not a job aid, some other form. A lookup, online lookup reference. There's a couple good, really good software tools out there now, add-ons to internal systems. WalkMe is one, and there are several others that are performance support tools. Electronic EPSS is what they're called. And they walk people through how to do things, and it's really great for those one-off situations that we could stand in front of a class and teach all week long, and they're never going to remember it because they don't need to know how, they don't need to use it anytime soon. So if it, I guess the rule of thumb all the way around is if it's not directly applicable information, take it out of the course and put it in a job aid. And leave your course or class to this is what they need to apply tomorrow in their work. That's probably the best measuring tool I can come up with.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so just again to our listeners, if you've got questions or things you want to ask Dawn, we're gonna have a little bit of time, but so put those in the chat. Let us know if you got comments, thoughts about job aids. How are you using job aids? We'd love to hear from you. And real quick, Dawn, if you don't mind me taking a second, I want to announce that this is really cool. We are taking this show and all of our other shows that we've done live, and they're being turned into a podcast. And you can hear the trailer episode of our podcast is now, right now, I know it's on Spotify and Stitcher, coming to other platforms just as soon as they get through all the hoops that we got to jump through. But you can search for it. It's called the Visual Lounge. And we'll be doing you can see here, we've already gotten our lower third, the Visual Lounge. That's what this is a nod to. So just letting everybody know, if you want to go give us a rating or, help us out a little bit. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to hear what you want us, what can we do to help you guys get more out of our episodes and shows. And this way, if you miss it, you can listen while you're doing laundry or whenever you listen to your podcasts. So Dawn, I'm wondering if you want to, I want to try something here. And we talked about this before, so everybody knows I'm not putting you completely on the spot. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to walk through the process of thinking about developing a job aid. Because I think we've talked a lot about when, and I think for me at least, it feels like job aids, they're they don't have to be super complex. It's not like, you're having to learn all this stuff. It's like,
code. We all have to learn how to code now. No, not really.
Right. It's a practical thing. You're going to make something that's going to be helpful, and there's lots of ways to do that. But I thought we could work through an exercise. And folks, if you've got comments and you got something you want us to work through, maybe we'll see if we have time. But so what I was thinking is we'll do a piece of software training because frankly, that's easy for me because I work in a software company. And we'll use a tool that we're both familiar with. Let's use Snagit because that's it's an easy tool to get access to. But let's say we wanted to make a job aid for someone to use a function in Snagit. And I'll let you pick the function so that way it's not, because I could dig some obscure topic. But and then we'll just walk through how would we go about doing that.
Okay. Let's try a software tool. See if we can break the stream down that way.
So
right?
Should we do Snagit as that tool? Is that fine with you?
That's fine with me.
Okay, let's say what's your favorite tool in Snagit to use? Because I know you're a Snagit user.
Oh yeah, I use Snagit every day of my life. Matt has heard this many times. I use it every day of my life. So I do things like cropping images, resizing images. I'm big on adding arrows, circles, and text to images. Those would be my primary reasons for using.
And you use the template feature, correct?
I do, now that I have it. I didn't.
Now that you have it. So what if, so let's say that we're obviously people are learning Snagit all the time, and the template feature is something that you're going to want your business to use. How would we go about creating a proper job aid for that feature? Because I know, like at TechSmith, we've created tutorial videos, we've created the in-product help, but I don't think we have any job aids that are a quick reference. So where would someone start if they're going to be teaching like a piece of software or something else? Like we probably go to the guide or the checkbox, right?
So
the chart.
Let's just say that the templates didn't come till Snagit 2019, right?
Correct.
So if you haven't updated to 2019 or 2020, you won't have the templates. You'll have to spend that little bit of extra money, and it's not very much. And then with the upgrade, you get some templates included and some you will purchase additionally. So I have Snagit open on my screen, and I forgot the question you asked me. Sorry.
So where would we start with if we're going to create a job aid about using templates in Snagit? Like, how do we get going? Like, let's walk through that process.
Sure.
We're on a design quest.
File new, and the first choice that comes up is create image from template, create video from images. So I'm going to choose create image from template.
Okay, I'm gonna put this up on the screen. So so right now everyone can see my image comparison there. So you're walking through the steps, right, of that process. Yep. And so I'm guessing that's a good first step is understand what the process is. Are you there, Don?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry.
So the first step would be we go through and we capture, like, understand what the process for doing this is, right?
Right. And if we're going to be doing a job aid on cropping images, for instance, you probably need to create and store all the images that you want in the job aid.
Okay.
I would do all of that first, whether it's screenshots or it's images from internet websites, whatever kinds of images you're going to use. And then I would also get the images ready. So I might crop the images ahead of time rather than trying to do both at once. I might resize them, recolor them, any of those filter things that I want to do. And then when I get into the template,
so it sounds like there's a lot of prep steps, right? Like you're going through each step, making sure all your assets are ready and built. And so it makes sense, right? So if we're gonna make a quick job aid, and for something like this, is there a particular type of job aid that you would think would work better over the rest?
It depends on how many steps I think I need. The portrait one has more blocks in it. I probably am saying all the wrong things, and you wish you had practiced this with me in advance. But the portrait layout has the room for 6 or 8.
Right.
And then the landscape version allows for bigger pictures, fewer steps, so you would just have to do more pages.
Right. So Don, let's take a step back for a second, because I think we should have arranged this a little bit better, but I think we're on the good. We're gonna swing this around a little bit. So I'm thinking that we should walk through the process of making an actual. Forget maybe Snagit's throwing us for a curve here. How do we make a job aid? Where do we start? Right? Like if we're given a task, if I came to you and you're a consultant, which you are, and I said, Don, TechSmith asked me to make a job aid on Snagit, and I don't know where to start, and they want me to make a job aid about using the templates. I don't have to use Snagit to make that. So where would I start with that process?
Okay, so I'm at the client's office or we're meeting like this.
Yep.
I'm going to do full-on needs assessment. I'm going to ask a gazillion questions and I'm going to talk to people that are doing the work. And I'm going to talk to the requesters saying what's new, what's old, so that I can get a sense of what they need to know. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, is qualifying and quantifying what they need to know. I am
Perfect.
going to do the best of my ability to get those steps put into sequential order. Back on the images piece, if it's a job aid, it's probably going to have some visual component. So I'm going to spend lots of time getting images, pictures, screenshots, whether I'm going to do those physically myself or I'm going to have subject matter experts doing that as well, providing them. I think back to the days when I was walking the fields of the sulfuric acid plant, ginormous place in Florida, and taking lots of photos, and then I had my subject matter expert label them and tell me what they were. And they would also take the pictures in the places where I wasn't allowed to go. My security clearance wasn't high enough. And so you're going to gather all the information you need, or you think you need. You're going to gather a whole ton more than you probably will use in the job aid. But that gives you a sense of what's out there. I might also look at their existing training materials, etc., to kind of discern what's existing and what is new. Then I'm going to start talking about what type of job aid makes sense. Is it going to be a flip the book? Is it going to be a tabbed layout? And it might end up being some sort of electronic tool or digital tool that'll probably live on a device, whether an iPad or tablet, or be fully mobile enabled. And you can just touch what you need to get what you're looking for. I might think about, is there a need for a vocabulary list? Are they looking, they need definitions of new terminology. Is that a job aid? I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, this is great, because a couple things that you said I think are helpful to hear, right? Like when you're going to set out to make a job aid, the fact that you brought up like a needs assessment, and I'm guessing they don't always have to be super formal. But
No.
you focus on what's new and what's old, and it was even the question when we were kind of crossing our signals a little bit. You said like, what version of Snagit did it start in? And I think that's a really key thing to think about, because so for in this example in particular, it's very likely that someone doesn't have the right version of Snagit.
Right.
Like, and if you were that, let's say 50% of the people did, 50% of the people didn't, and we just didn't know that, like we would start in the wrong, 50% of the people would start in the wrong place.
Yep.
And just the job aid from that point forward would be worthless.
It might as well be written in a language they don't speak.
Right.
I mean, it's totally useless. So you have to do the work. I've been doing a lot of writing over the last couple of weeks, and every time I finish something in there, I find myself wanting to type, you need to do the work. You need to do the work. And it's a little bit repetitious, but I don't know how else to explain it. You have to know what they already know. You have to know what they need to know and know how to do. And then you have to figure out what that gap is in between, because that's where your course and your job aid, or just your job aid, that's the gap in the middle, is what you're trying to figure out so that you can fill the gap for them. And it's vocabulary lists, it's list of codes, that computer codes that you need to know. It's everything. Google's a job aid if you think about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's interesting you brought up the vocabulary, because we just had at TechSmith, one of our folks from HR just put out a document. It's like, hey, here are some of the common acronyms that people need to understand, and he was actually crowdsourcing some of it, because there's like we're like any business, we've got too many acronyms to really know all of them, and in certain contexts it might mean one thing, and another one it might mean another. So yeah, but it's interesting because that's totally a job aid, so that I can better it's a job aid to the culture, or a job aid to the understanding the organization. So yeah, I think I think you're right on in that those are
oh yeah,
needed
I've
pieces.
made many of those over time. And Jargon is another thing that is really helpful information you can provide to your new employees, because You walk in and you start sitting in meetings, and you might as well, it's a lot of glazed eyeballs type of thing. So, putting them up on the intranet is also a good tip I will give. And also, it's strange but true. Acronyms mean different things in different organizations. They're the same acronym, but they mean different things.
Oh yeah. Very, very much so. So, Dawn, this has been, it's actually gotten me really excited. I need a project to go and create a job aid, but I think as we get close to wrapping up here, are there any aspects of job aids that we haven't covered that you feel like would be important for the audience listening to know? Like any gotchas, any things to be concerned about or think about that, like, like here's where people get caught in the process of making job aids that you would want to talk to or let us know about. And maybe not. Maybe it's just as easy as it seems, but there's always gotchas, I feel like.
There's always gotchas. I think that sometimes we try to make things too complex that don't have to be. And so I have found in the past that the more complex the learning content, or the more complex the person's job tasks are, the simpler the job aid needs to be. And but the biggest barrier I've encountered over time has been that we build fabulous performance support tools, whatever they are, and we don't make them easy to get to. We don't make them patently obvious places to go. So if it's going to be on SharePoint, if they have to go to 16 clicks to get there, they're never going to use it. And anybody that works in a large organization that has SharePoint knows exactly what I'm talking about. So figure out ways that you can make them the one click or the fingertip reference, whatever that is in your environment. Other gotchas, like I said, probably Excel is not my favorite generally, so I wouldn't use it, and I would probably push back on organizational people that would want me to build something that way. I just don't think it's intuitive enough to build something visual, and most of the time the job aid has to have a visual component in order to make it effective. But otherwise, you're pretty much just limited by your own imagination. So open your mind to job aids is what I say.
Yeah, awesome. So as you were answering that final question, I wrote this statement down because I think I'm trying to encapsulate like what's the key here, and it says the best job aid is used and helpful, meaning if it's not used, it doesn't matter, and if it's not helpful, it doesn't matter. True?
Right, exactly. I used enough job aids in my life to know how valuable they are, and I think in our digital life where we have the access to things where we can actually count the clicks, that we can measure the accessibility, are people using it? Let's do that. And when we see drop off, then let's find out why they're not using it. Does it need to be reworked? Maybe it totally doesn't work for the system in the way it is today, whatever a process. Then we know we need to enhance it, refresh it, do something new. Or everybody's just doing their job really well and they don't need it anymore. But you won't know unless you ask people. And that's what we have to do.
Awesome. Well, Dawn, this has been a fun conversation. Sorry for getting a little bit kind of wrapped around in the wrong. We made it back, though. Of course, everything's good. And thanks to everybody who's tuned in. Thank you for your comments and questions. If you guys are interested in learning more about Dawn's work here at Job Aids, go check out the TechSmith Academy course. It is free. She's done such great work out here. So, Dawn, thank you so much for joining me today in the Visual Lounge.
I like it in the Visual Lounge.
It's fun to say, isn't it? And here's a little piece of trivia, and most people won't know this, but if you've been a fan of TechSmith for a while, and I've been at TechSmith a long time, in 2005, we launched. There was a blog because everyone had blogs in 2005, and we still have a blog, but it was called the Visual Lounge. That was TechSmith's blog, so we just brought the name back.
I saw that today, and I think that's what it used to be called. So yeah. Cool.
So, Dawn, thank you once again. We appreciate your time, and thank you again. And guys, go check out our course. It's really awesome. It's got great stuff, and you can learn more about creating job aids. So,
the resource guide is all for you.
That's right. Great downloadables. So, all right. Well, thanks again to Don. We're going to move on because you know what we like to do here at the end of our show is we like to talk about other great resources beyond the TechSmith Academy that are available for everybody. And so let's get on to what's new at TechSmith. All right, so everybody, we got what's new at TechSmith going on here. So we got a couple things, and let me just get up my screen here so you guys can see. We got a couple blog posts for you guys. So really good stuff here. If I can find the right buttons to push, challenges of doing everything by yourself here today. Let's see, which one do we want? Wrong one there. Let's try this one. That's almost the right one, and get the right. Here we go. We'll focus right here so you guys can see it. So the first one is how to sync audio and video sources is new on the blog. We got a great video from Andy Owen. He is our video producer. He's going to talk about how to sync audio and video sources. So if you are someone who records audio and videos separately, or you're using like separate audio input device to capture your audio, he can walk you through the process, talks about why it's so important. Lots of great information in here. The other one that we want to point out for today, let me get back to the homepage of the blog, latest articles. We've got how to create a training manual, steps and tools that make it easy. So this is another good one. So it's going to walk you through how to create a basic training manual, how to kind of those basic steps. If you're new to creating those, we'll help you out, give you some tips about using Snagit to help you do that. Of course, we always try to get video in there. And then one last thing that's actually very apropos for our conversation today. We have a blog post, how to create job aids that skyrocket your team's performance. Go figure. So you can go check that out. You can read through some other ideas and thoughts about creating job aids. Lots of great stuff there. Of course, we've got always new stuff coming out here at TechSmith. We've got lots and lots of stuff for you guys every single week. We want to make you as successful as possible, not just with using our tools, although we're really happy to do that as well. We want to make sure that you guys are all able to do those things that our tools hopefully will help you with. One last thing I want to mention that is new. I don't have anything to show for this per se, but I do want to mention that if you are a non-English speaker and you happen to speak Spanish, Portuguese, or Japanese, Camtasia is now available on Windows and Mac on those platforms. So to all of any Spanish users out there, speaking users or Portuguese speaking users, you can download Camtasia, and there is an installed version that you can get the language in your native language. So hopefully that is something that's helpful to you. With that said, again, we've got the podcast is launching, the Visual Lounge. Go check it out on your favorite podcast platform if you want to catch a recap of this. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. We'll be back, of course, next week. We got Andy Crespedina. If you don't know Andy, check out Orbit Media. He's going to be talking about involving YouTube videos in your content strategy, which is a little bit different than what we normally talk about rather than instruction, but it's honestly, there's going to be some fantastic ideas and tips just to make sure your content can be found. Great for customer education, great for marketers and things like that. And whether you're making how-to videos, technical documentation, or trying to make better video and images, don't forget, level up every single day, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.